If you bring forth what is within you will save you. But if you do not bring forth what is within you will destroy you. And I've seen it go both ways more times than I can count. We're given one chance after another to kind of transcend our old programming and to come out from beyond those limiting beliefs. And if you're paying attention, those will come at you all the time. So it's important for us to open our open-hearted listening as well as our open ears and open-minded listening for what are the messages that are trying to come through to us from other people, from life itself at any moment. Because what I've found is that many of them are about bringing forth more of what your natural gifts are and not doing the things that are not your natural gifts.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I hope you're here to get another episode of What's Right with the World. It is still an amazing world, folks, full of potential and possibility every day, and you can count on this podcast and the Goodness Exchange to get a spring in your step again. Okay, we're going to start with that right now with a guest that I am so proud to bring to you. There is a book called The Big Leap that my husband and I discovered about probably 10 years ago. And we read it through once and we were so taken and realized what a game changer it was that we got a hotel room in Montreal and one wintry, beautiful night or two. I think it was a full weekend. And there we spent the entire weekend with a fireplace and a big king-size bed listening to the author of this book read The Big Leap. And then we would pause it periodically and have no end to the chats. Well, this is the power of certain books in people's lives. And I am so proud to bring you the author of The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks. Gay Hendricks is a renowned author for 40 other books, but this book, and then the one that we're going to talk about a lot today, which is a follow-up called Your Big Leap Year. It's a day-by-day, 1% improvement a day kind of a thing, where you can get real progress to start happening. You know, you can break up the limiting beliefs that you have had since you were a 4-year-old. I mean, this man has been a psychologist for 40 years and renowned around the world for this book and others. So again, we are just so privileged to talk to Gay Hendricks. He is going to drop ideas on us that I use every day of my life, such as finding your zone of genius and the upper limit problem. I'm telling you, it's going to be a great show. So welcome, Gay Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Linda. I appreciate it.
Okay, Gay, I'm going to first give people kind of an overview of the kinds of things that are in The Big Leap. This opens up a whole new world of self-awareness that I wanted to launch right into for people. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to take stuff straight out of the book and have you talk to us about the insights, okay?
Okay.
So, Gay, one of the very foundational ideas that you present is that we all have upper limit ideas about ourselves, about our future, about what's possible, this notion of an upper limit that we can never achieve past that. And that is the starting point for your insights. Talk to us about the upper limit.
Yes. Well, I first started to notice this in my own life way before I thought about writing a book about it. But I noticed that, like, at the time I wasn't married, but my girlfriend and I would get along well for a few days. And then somebody would start an argument or criticize the other one or something. And then it'd take us a couple of weeks to get out of that. And same thing, I was overweight at the time and I would go on a diet and I would do very well for 3 days or 4 days. And then like I'd have one piece of chewing gum and then I'd say, oh, well, since I've had one piece of chewing gum, I might as well have a pint of ice cream, And so that was the way my mind worked at the time. And so I started calling it the upper limit problem because it usually happens when things are going well or start to go better than they have before. And so I started talking to my clients about that. I was lucky enough to be getting my PhD at Stanford in counseling psychology at the very same time a lot of the early Silicon Valley companies were just getting started, and they were full of incredibly bright people, but many of them were very stunted emotionally. You know, a lot of engineers don't put a lot of attention to their emotions. But anyway, I was in the process of working with a lot of really gifted entrepreneurs and people like that at the time. And they would do this same thing over and over again that I called the upper limit problem. Things would start going better at work, and then they'd have some problem at home. Or things would be going great at home, but then they'd have some problem at work that would influence the other end of their lives. And so I started really thinking about what causes that in people. And I came up with two big insights that I think can be really helpful to people, and they're in the Big Leap. But just to summarize them, one of the underpinnings of the upper limit problem are limiting beliefs, old beliefs that you got established before you could think for yourself, you know, before you were in school and all of that. So, you know, like beliefs about what is possible. And a lot of us get very stunted beliefs like, I don't deserve love, or I don't deserve the good things of life. Our family is poor, therefore we don't deserve to have good things. And those limiting beliefs get into our system and start influencing every aspect of our lives. And so in the Big Leap, I attempted to shine the flashlight of awareness on that problem of what are the limiting beliefs and how can we unlimit those. And so a lot of the Big Leap is about how to unwire yourself from your old limiting beliefs and get into another conversation called your genius zone. You know, once you get free of your upper limits, you're free to roam the upper limits of how far you can go, the outer limits, not the upper limits, but the outer limits of how far you can go with your own native creativity.
So I just have to concur that that is exactly what this book does. I mean, that's what Chuck and I did. My husband and I are we were childhood sweethearts. So we literally sort of raised each other. We both have terrible childhood traumas that we kind of raised each other through. And there we sat in this beautiful Montreal winter setting for 3 days, laying on the bed, listening to this book and peeling back the onion and getting to places that were the sources of constant fights for 40 years and not good things that happened when we were raising our kids because we were kids ourselves in some circumstances, right? Like, this is the beauty of this book. Okay, so then I want you to talk about this zone of genius, because what I do with the Goodness Exchange for 10 years is interview innovators all over the world, like yourself, doing the most extraordinary things, thinking new thoughts. And I tell you, these people, one way or another, have found their zone of genius. And whether they have outward success monetarily or with their project, they are definitely doing something they're uniquely built to contribute. Only they in their life story could get to this point where they're teaching girls to ride skateboards in Afghanistan, because that's the only way you can get girls to have an education is if they use skateboards. I'm telling you, the innovators out there putting two and two together and making the world a better place are forever. So talk to us about this progression to finding what we're uniquely built to contribute in that zone of genius.
Well, I believe, having worked with, at this point, more than 20,000 individuals, as well as a lot of couples and executives and folks like that, I believe that each of us has a genius zone inside of us made up of two big parts. The first part is it's what you love to do. It's what you most love to do. And the second part is what makes your biggest contribution to the world around you, whether that's your family or your community, or, you know, if you write books or something, the whole world. But it doesn't really matter what it is that your genius zone produces. What's important is that you tune into that and let it become a very active, vocal part of your life. One of my old mentors, Abraham Maslow, said, it doesn't matter if you're creating a genius soup or writing a genius symphony. It's all the same thing because it calls on what you most love to do, even though the soup may only feed 5 people.
Right. Okay. That is a lovely way to say it. Okay. So, one of the things that you refer to in the book is this notion, I'll read it, that the unconscious keeps us in a safe zone that is kind of like competence, like never lets us get to the genius. Talk to us about that.
Well, in studying how people spend their time every day, I lump it into 4 main categories. People sometimes are doing things they're in their zone of incompetence. They're not very good at it. They don't like it. Somebody else could do it a heck of a lot better. But a lot of us are kind of addicted to suffering to the extent that we like to spend time in our zone of incompetence doing things we're absolutely unsuited to doing. Like my buddy Tom, who's totally incompetent with technical things, spent 13 hours one weekend trying to get his new printer installed. And when I gently pointed out that, his consulting fee at the time was something like $250 an hour, I pointed out that you spent nearly $3,000 doing something you hate to do. He hired a kid down the block and got it done for $100. So anyway, some of us, though, are addicted to spending time in our zone of incompetence. The second zone is our zone of competence, where you're doing something you can do, but somebody else could do it just as well. Like I give the example in the book of being in line at the post office trying to mail a package, and the line was moving very slowly, and there was one clerk up there doing all of the stuff. I calculated that I'd spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of time doing something I did not want to do. That was the last day I ever did anything like that. But so a lot of us spend time in our competence zone where what we really need to do is delegate those 2 areas, get somebody else to do it because they may be a genius at it. Like I'm just looking at my office here, which is beautifully organized by a young woman named Alessandra Rodi, who comes in here and organizes things for me because I'm not very good at that. And I don't even try to be good at it. So, but she's a genius at it. And not only that, she likes to do it, like I can't imagine organizing somebody's bookshelf and enjoying it, but I'll come in here and she'll be singing and dancing with it, metaphorically. Anyway, let's get to the big 2 zones that I want everybody to occupy. The top 2 zones are your zone of excellence, where you're doing things you're good at. You're better than most people. Like they asked Tiger Woods one time, how do you compare yourself to other golfers? And he said, better than most. So that's a very modest way of putting it. But anyway, he's in his zone of genius when he's on the golf course because he loves it and he's making a big contribution in it. Most of us, even gifted people, get stuck for a time in our zone of excellence because when you're in your zone of excellence, you're making good money, you're pleasing the family, you're pleasing the crowds, and you're getting lots of attaboys and attagirls from it. But there's this little place inside that just doesn't let go of us, fortunately, that's in there saying, come on there, girl, come on there, guy. You're needing to bring forth what is truly within you.
This is something I've noticed with my patients. My husband and I are both dentists, and we've known thousands and thousands of people. Been very fortunate to have that much relationship in our lives, and that's it. It's so amazing to recognize when someone, whether it's just a teenager that has found their zone of excellence, and they just come alive, or a grandparent figuring out that grandparenting is their excellence. I don't think there's any judgment in this. It's just what brings you alive. Is that right?
Yes, it's what makes you feel most alive and most connected to the universe, too. Many of us go around with the attitude that we're somehow separate from the universe and that sometimes we're at war with it. But we only realize finally that we are the universe, that we are connected, not only to the tides of the ocean, but we're connected to the movement of the energies in the universe. And so that's just a natural part of life. I was reading in an astronomy magazine one time that they've discovered a place out there in outer space, a real cosmic hotspot that's bringing forth 32 new suns, SUNS, like our sun up there, 32 new suns per second is coming out of this place. And I mean, that's creativity, just pure raw creativity. But we're made of the same substance. We're made of exactly the same elements as everything else is. And so let's get busy acknowledging that we ourselves are a massive wellspring of creativity if we can just get ourselves out of the way.
Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more with Gay Hendricks about his book, The Big Leap, and his new book, Your Big Leap Year. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So, if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. All right, so we're back with Gay Hendricks, the author of The Big Leap, one of my personal favorite books, a book that my husband and I spent an entire weekend studying, and it changed our lives. So I'm happy to share this with everyone. So Gay, we're going through the book here, and on page 107 is an insight that my husband and I have used our whole lives since studying this book. This notion of the first step to wholeness is discovering your story. Oh my gosh. When you just get down to it, get real, dig in, own your story, good and bad, it is life-changing. Talk to us about that.
Yes, each of us is born into a story that's unfolding long before we got there, and that we're born into whatever's going on at the time. And like in my own case, I had a very unusual start to my life because I got a lot of my interior chemistry bollocksed up because my father died suddenly at age 32 while my mother didn't know yet that she was even pregnant with me. And so I was gestated in a state of emotion where my mother stopped eating basically and went from 120 pounds down to 89 pounds when I was born. And so my glandular system got kind of messed up so that I gained a lot of weight spontaneous. I was the only fat kid in a family of all skinny people. And so nobody could figure out why I ate the same food and got fat. And so it wasn't known by science at the time what the problem was. It didn't get figured out until much later. But anyway, so that was a story that I was born into and developed into, a story of that I was a problem. And I took up a lot of time because my mother was a very busy career woman and didn't have the family joke is that my mother only wanted one child. And unfortunately, that was my brother, who was 8 years older than I was. And so I was kind of a later life accident that turned into a medical problem because I had to be taken around to different specialists when I was a kid and got shots and pills and diets and everything like that. And so anyway, a story like that, everybody's got a story like that. It may not have all those kind of details in it, but look at any story of any person and you'll find there that by the time they walk off to school and start kindergarten or the first grade, they've already soaked up a lot of their wisdom or limitations, either one, that their life has to offer. I had a great example of that. I'm recovering from a surgery where I had a complicated fracture of my femur, my knee, and my hip. And I had a kind of freak accident, slip and fall out by my swimming pool, and I really did it up. I'd never broken a bone before in my body, age 78. And but I broke a bunch of them and have had to have a couple of different surgeries, and I'm actually going to be having another one in middle of August. So anyway, to make a long story short, I've been busy doing this whole rehab thing for a while now, which required some interior shifting on my part because I'm not used to being taken care of. I'm used to being the person who takes care of people. And I've never been sick in 25 or 30 years. I haven't even had a cold since way back in the 1990s. And so it's been very humbling to shift into letting people take care of me. It's brought something out of me and brought something into me that I didn't know was a limitation, but there it is. And life is always presenting us with places where we're limiting ourselves. And I feel very grateful to this set of circumstances and surgeries because I'm not sure I would have learned that any other way. So, in spite of the inconvenience of having to walk around with a walker or a cane, at least until I get this next surgery, I'm very grateful to the circumstances it's afforded me.
Well, I think that is one of the great lessons that Chuck and I took away, that we live almost every day. It's kind of this good thing, bad thing, who knows, right? Like you just acknowledge that a very bad thing yielded a very good outcome. That's this whole notion of limiting beliefs in a nutshell, right? You had some limiting beliefs about your body or your ability to recover or your ability to or maybe some about how strong you were since you never broke a bone your whole life. And then we learn.
I teach my students that life is happy to teach us by tickling us with a feather, or if we're not paying attention, by dropping a sledgehammer on our heads. And I've had both kinds of learning, and I've come to prefer the tickle with a feather. And but if we're not paying attention, whoosh, look out.
And that process of discovery, of constant discovery, is something that's notable in your book that we were left with indelibly. My husband and I are just constantly in a moment of discovery. And I wanted you to talk about this discovering your unique ability part, because I think that a lot of people think they don't have a unique ability.
Yes. In fact, that's the big barrier, because it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a group of people in Calcutta, India, or Berlin, Germany, or Beverly Hills. If I've got a room full of, say, a couple of hundred people, I will always have 30 or 40 people that stick up their hand and say, I'm not a creative person, or and that just makes my hair, what I have left of it, stand on end because, see, human beings don't know how creative we really are already. I mean, look at this amazing thing. You and I are having a conversation over a technology that if my grandparents saw it, their eyes would pop out of their head. They'd keel over backwards. They wouldn't believe anything like this. And I can remember I even watched with my granddad, who was in his 90s. I watched the first man walk on the moon. Remember that? Getting off the thing on the moon, one giant leap for mankind, etc. Anyway, I remember the look on my granddad's face as he was staring at that television set. Just, it was, this cannot be happening. And yet it was. And so life is always taking us beyond, beyond, beyond. At the center of it, though, is this thing that's very sacred, I think, to human beings, which I call your genius. You can even look back, like one of my favorite quotes comes from the Gospel of Thomas, which was one of the apocryphal Gospels that were left out of the official Bible, but it has a lot of really good stuff in it. And one thing it says is, if you bring forth what is within you will save you. But if you do not bring forth what is within you will destroy you. And I've seen it go both ways more times than I can count, that we're given one chance after another to kind of transcend our old programming and to come out from beyond those limiting beliefs. And if you're paying attention, those will come at you all the time. So it's important for us to open our listening, our open-hearted listening, as well as our open ears and open-minded listening for what are the messages that are trying to come through to us from other people, from life itself at any moment. Because what I've found is that many of them are about bringing forth more of what your natural gifts are and not doing the things that are not your natural gifts.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Okay. So I want to get into some of the parts of the new book, but I've got one more topic in the old book that you just have to comment on. Talk to us about getting out of the box and into the spiral.
Yes. Well, each of those things I mentioned, like the zone of incompetence, is a box you've got to get out of. You've got to take the bold move sometime of catching yourself doing something that you don't like to do, that you're not good at, and finding another way to get it done, hiring somebody or trading or whatever you can do. Also important to get out of the box called the competence zone, where you're doing stuff that you're good at and can do, but somebody else could do it just as well. The third zone, the zone of excellence, gets a little sticky because it's a good thing. And yet, if you stay in there too long and don't develop your genius, it can be a very unsatisfying thing. I think I told a story in one of the books about walking down the hall of a big 50,000 person corporation with the CEO. And I was talking to him about the value, which I start people with, of just taking 10 minutes a day to tune in and ask themselves, what is my true genius and how could I be expressing it more? What do I most love to do and how could I be expressing that more? And he was saying, oh gosh, if I just had that 10 minutes, that would change everything. So I said, put on the brakes, and we walked back to his office and we plunked down for 10 minutes. I just had him sit there and wonder about, what do I most love to do and how could I do it more? That 10 minutes can change your life. Even 2 minutes of that can change your life. But wow, I was so blown away by its positive effect on him that I basically started doing that with every executive that comes here. I first put them on a regimen of 10 minutes a day. And that alone will change your life. But I know a secret that once you start devoting 10 minutes a day to your genius, you're going to want to do 20 minutes and 30 minutes. And pretty soon you're going to be wanting to do it all the time. It took me 20 years to go from like spending 1 hour a day in my genius to spending all my time in my genius zone. But once I got there, like about 1999, it's been 25 years now of just doing things that are in my genius zone, things that I love to do. And so it's a real gift.
It's a real gift. Well, you got my husband there. I don't know that we do it 100% of the time, but we have had a changed life because of this book, The Big Leap. Now we got to devote some time to talk about the next one where you get to apply it. And it's this book, Your Big Leap Year. What I found very lovely about this book, it's not asking you to change overnight. It's less than 1% per day, but it adds up. It's that kind of thing.
That was the idea, is that even if you've only got 30 seconds a day or 1 minute a day or 2 minutes a day, every one of those pages has a different activity, something that you can actively do, something you can think about in your mind or think something you write down. And that's the idea, is to keep working that genius into your life a minute or two at a time. And you'd be surprised. I've got people now that have worked. The book came out in February, so here we are in the summer. So we got people that have worked through half of it so far. Just amazing results. I can't hardly wait till people get all the way through it so I can begin to share some of those results.
Okay, so we're going to have to share a few of them, okay? Some that I found. I've pretty much read the book and it's fantastic. And I'm going to share a few and have you comment on them, okay?
Excellent.
All right. I love, in this hurried world, this world where we just rush from thing to thing, sometimes not even standing on 2 feet right where we are, where we tried to get to so badly, we're leaping off to the next thing, right? So you have this 10-second savoring exercise. Talk to us about 10-second savoring.
Yes, well, savoring is one of my favorite verbs. I collect verbs. That's one thing as a wordsmith that I do, is I collect the most juicy verbs. And to me, the idea of savoring something, to just put your attention on celebrating a particular thing, like a gourmet. Like, I sat next to a guy once at a dinner, and he was a wine nut. He was like in his 80s, but he told me rapturously about sipping an 1864 Margaux Bordeaux wine, which is supposed to be one of the greatest wines ever made. And he got a chance to sip this wine, and he was telling me about it. Well, when you do something like that, you're savoring, you're experiencing it, you're savoring the foretaste, the mid taste, the after the taste. I'm not a wine person, but I appreciate people who can apply that set of fine distinctions to any aspect of life. Like, I've been back to see the same Rembrandt self-portrait at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, probably 15 or 20 times over the years. And every time I go to New York, if I have time to get up there, I go stand and look at that painting, because it's the whole history of psychology and art and human life in one place. It's a magnificent looking at himself as an elder person, just exactly how he saw himself. But it has such depth of consciousness and heart in it. And the same thing in a more modern painting is Vincent van Gogh's self-portraits and his Starry Night. I always go to look at that too. So I savor that painting because I can see so much in it. Now, if a person is not interested in painting, maybe they're a house painter, but they don't care about art painting, they could stand there and they say, wow, that's an interesting shade of orange that painting used, but they're not looking at it through the lens of a person who appreciates art. So savoring is when you turn your conscious attention to whatever it is. And just right now, wherever you're appreciating this video or audio or however you're consuming this, there's something in your environment that could be savored. And just take 10 seconds. I'm savoring the amount of beautiful space and aesthetic arrangement in my office. Somebody who loves aesthetics and arrangement has dedicated themselves to making my office look perfect in that regard. Everything I look at in my office is something I love. So that could be true for you too. Just make it happen.
Yes. Oh, okay. So just to repeat, the book is full of these sorts of small bits of wonder that you can just practice each day, just one, and a couple of times, and it changes the whole shift. Okay, here's another one. I love this. You have an Aristotle quote here. The secret to success is to know something nobody else knows.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
Is that an amazing idea?
It's an amazing
See,
idea.
and I think everybody has something within them that their life experience has given them that fits that quality, that has that quality to it. You know something that nobody else knows. Now, how can you share that and contribute that in a way that makes other people's lives better? That's to me the essence of good living, is to bring forth the things that are sacred to yourself and bring them forth in a way that other people can benefit from them too.
I think about that around the family dinner table, Gay. The times you're quiet when you could have said that thing, that would have
Mm.
given everybody some peace of mind or whatever. Or even in a business meeting, there'll be that quiet person sitting over in the corner, and they have something to say that could change the tone of the room, but they're keeping it to themselves for lack of courage or self confidence or something. I think that this is really important, that we feel free to add what we know.
Yes, and let's underline the know part, because a lot of times it's not an intellectual knowing. It's a different kind of knowing, an intuitive knowing or a feelingful knowing, that not all of us are good with words or even good with pictures, but a lot of us are good with movement and feeling and the kinesthetic and emotional aspects of life. I remember a conversation between a marriage counseling conversation between a very intellectual engineer and his very emotional wife. And he was always lecturing her on not being so emotional. And she was always lecturing him on being too logical and unemotional. And they thought the other one was wrong and they were right. That was the problem. And I said, well, let's just take a moment and savor how right both of you are. And they hadn't considered that possibility before, that they could integrate those two things. And it was so beautiful to watch, because his position was emotions are human error, over and out, and her position was, well, emotions are the stuff of life. It what makes Mozart sound different from Beethoven. So I think that the healing move is always toward integration and bringing the parts of ourselves into alignment inside ourselves. Because when you think about it, the human brain is about the size of a good sized grapefruit. And the rind of the grapefruit is about the size of the cortex, our thinking brain. But there's all that stuff down there in the juicy part of the grapefruit that's really the essential stuff of life, that if we can open up and make friends with both our logic intellectual part and our emotional feelingful part, then we have a possibility of coming at life from a place of wholeness. And if you come at life from a place of wholeness, wholeness is produced around you. And that's a very satisfying way to go through life, is bringing forth more wholeness in people.
That's so lovely. So we're going to wrap up here with a question that I ask almost everyone near the end of our interview. This interview's been 45 minutes long. You've talked to people all your life about these insights. And what if this had been just 3 minutes? Like, Gay, is there any time you look at the news, or you just put your hand on your head, or you just say, "Oh, I only wish people knew"? Is there something that you just wish people knew? Something you want to leave us with?
Yes. I wish people knew the power of speaking authentically. Doesn't matter if you're saying I'm scared or I'm happy or I don't know how I feel, but just to be able to speak authentically rather than cover it up with all the stuff that people cover that up with. The second thing is I really wish that people could catch on to the power of taking personal responsibility instead of blaming when things go wrong. To say, how did I create this and how can I benefit from it and how can I learn from it in a way that accelerates my path in life? So taking personal responsibility is one of those big things in life that a lot of people get so entrenched in kind of the victim position and blaming others that they don't savor the power of personal responsibility. And the third thing would be dedicating yourself to your creativity. Erik Erikson says, a great developmental psychologist, that every breath you take after midlife is a choice between creativity and stagnation. Creativity or stagnation. I bet you found that to be absolutely true. I have.
Absolutely. Well, Gay, I hope we get to chat more. I had both these books so dog-eared, and we didn't have time to get through all of it. But I recommend The Big Leap and then Your Big Leap Year to everyone listening to this podcast, and I know it will change lives. Thank you for offering the world what you were uniquely built to contribute.
Well, thank you, and blessings to you on discovering your genius zone and bringing it forth in the world that assists other people with their path.
Well, thank you so much. I hope that the insights that Gay and I shared with you today help you through your week and you will live more towards what you are uniquely built to contribute and be a part of this conspiracy of goodness in our times. Thanks, Gay.
Thank you very much, Linda.